I'm going to share with you some shocking things about sugar that most people don't know. And then I want you to do an experiment. This is a simple 24-hour challenge. At the end of this video, we'll talk about what kind of results you might get from it. But first, you have to understand the magnitude of how powerful sugar really is over your life. So let's go through 14 different points that I think you should be aware of regarding this topic. Number 1, let me just start out by saying that our bodies were not designed to handle the amount of sugar that we consume. We have never in our history consumed this much sugar ever. And so our body does not know how to process this much sugar, because even the microbes in our gut, they're not used to this much sugar. So the more sugar we eat, the more problems we're going to experience. Okay? No. 2, when you ingest sugar, it actually creates a lot of inflammation in the body. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you know that inflammation is at the heart of all chronic disease. So you start to create inflammation. Now you have pain. You have stiffness. So that's point no 2. Point no 3, sugar depletes your vitamin B1. So B1 is good for your nerves. It's good for your heart. It's good for your brain. So as you consume more sugar, you start to develop more nerve problems, heart problems, and brain problems. The next point, no 4, is that consuming sugar causes insulin resistance. Now, why is that a problem? Well, when you develop insulin resistance, now nothing can signal to your body to make you hungry. So you're always hungry. You feel like you're never satisfied. You have this insatiable appetite. In addition to that, because insulin is supposed to keep your blood sugars low, when you can't utilize insulin anymore, now you have high blood sugars, which leads us to the next point. And that is that you start developing glucose intolerance, where your body simply cannot process or break down sugar anymore. So now you have sugar in your blood, you have sugar in your urine, and this is the precursor to diabetes. So this is why people that consume a lot of sugar have a higher risk of becoming a diabetic. Now, the next point is that since we're talking about diabetics are usually always hungry, right? Because they don't have enough insulin. And also their blood sugars are really high. So what happens is they become polycystic. Okay? They develop what's called polycystic ovarian syndrome. The ovaries start making more testosterone. Their adrenal glands make more cortisol. Even the testicles in men will enlarge. So the reason why this happens is because the male hormone, testosterone, converts into estrogen. And so if you have too much sugar in your bloodstream, you're going to have more conversion of testosterone to estrogen, giving you more estrogenic effects in your body. And for women, it's worse because they already have estrogen. So now you have too much estrogen in relation to progesterone. So instead of having a normal balance between these two hormones, you now have too much estrogen, which can lead to fibrocystic breast. It can lead to uterine fibroids. It can lead to cysts on the ovary. And it can also increase your risk of getting breast cancer and ovarian cancer. The next point is that if you consume too much sugar, you develop leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut is where you have an impaired intestinal lining, and you can have microscopic holes in the intestinal lining, allowing undigested food particles to flow into your bloodstream, causing your immune system to start reacting to these food particles, which then generates inflammation. And so this is why someone can be allergic to wheat or some other food, because they have leaky gut. Now, the next point is that you can have sugar alcohols, which means that you'll have sugar in your blood and you'll have sugar in your urine. And this can cause yeast infections, urinary tract infections, and vaginal infections. The next point is that if you're consuming too much sugar, you're going to have cravings for more sugar. You literally will have sugar cravings. Now, why is that? Well, when you consume sugar, it stimulates certain receptors in your brain that then generate neurotransmitters like dopamine, which makes you feel good, which then triggers another craving for more sugar. So this is why people with addictions have cravings. Well, when you eat sugar, you create cravings for sugar. And this is a big problem because it becomes this cycle that is very difficult to get off of. The next point is that sugar competes with a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. So if you're consuming a lot of sugar, you're going to have less of this neurotransmitter, which is important for focus, attention, concentration, memory, and learning. So that's why children that consume a lot of sugar in the United States have a hard time focusing in school. They have a hard time paying attention. They have behavioral issues. They have mood swings. And this is very common in our society today. Another thing that sugar will do to your brain is it will decrease serotonin. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that helps you sleep. So if you take something that decreases serotonin, what do you think is going to happen? You're not going to be able to sleep. And this is why children that are given too much sugar, like in a lot of these school systems and in the diets, they have a hard time sleeping. They can't focus in school, but they also can't sleep at night. The next thing that sugar will do, it'll bind to proteins in your blood and create advanced glycation end products, also known as GEs. And this can create a cross-linking of collagen in your joints, causing increased stiffness and pain in your joints. The next point is that sugar is considered a complete toxin to your liver. The liver has to detoxify the sugar. And so the more sugar you eat, the more work the liver has to do. And eventually, the liver gets overloaded, and now you have fatty liver. You have an inflamed liver. You have a compromised liver. And now you have cirrhosis of the liver, which can turn into liver cancer. And the last point that I want to talk about is that if you consume a lot of sugar, you can put yourself at risk for cancer. The way that it does, that it creates an acidic environment in your body. And cancer grows in an acidic environment. So the more sugar you consume, the more potential risk you put yourself at for getting cancer. And now, I want to give you a challenge. You need to go for 24 hours without any sugar. No breads, no pasta, no cereal, no milk, no juice, no sodas, no coffee with sugar, no tea with sugar, no desserts, no fruit juice, no sweetened beverages, no candy, no ice cream, no cookies, no pie, no cakes. None of those foods that I mentioned, none of those beverages that I mentioned for 24 hours. And here's what you're going to notice. You're probably going to feel better. You're probably going to feel more energized. You're going to have more mental clarity. You're going to think better. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. Your skin is going to look better. Your digestion will be better. You won't have bloating. You won't have burping. And you won't have any cravings. Now, if you did this challenge and you notice these type of benefits, which I know you will, then the next thing you want to do is to realize that the longer you can go without sugar, the better you're going to feel. So start going 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours without sugar, and notice how you feel. And at some point, you may say, wow, I feel so much better without this sugar. So now it makes sense to start cutting back on this sugar. But for most people, they don't do the challenge. They don't try to cut back on the sugar. They do and try to slowly wean themselves off the sugar, because it is such a powerful drug that they are re-addicted to it. They crave it, and so they just continue eating the sugar. But the key is to educate yourself. You now know the 14 things that I just shared with you about sugar. Now you have to decide to implement this information and use it to your advantage. If you have not seen my very popular video on salt, I put that video up right here. Check it out